America is going to take over the Gaza Strip and expel all the Palestinians. So I guess that's that, right? America is going to own Gaza, and everyone's having a panic attack. And I'm asking, why do you think that you still live in a world where America can unilaterally decide what happens in the world? Because this is essentially what your problem is. Never mind whether Trump is serious or not about what he's saying. Never mind about that. I'll talk about that in a minute. But why would anyone in 2025 think that it matters even slightly whether he is serious or not? The world is not America-centric anymore. I mean, truth be told, Trump himself is not America-centric. I mean, think about it. America occupied Afghanistan for 20 years to destroy the Taliban. Taliban is the government right now, and America left. America said that they wanted to topple Bashar al-Assad all the way back in 2011, and it didn't happen until just a couple of months ago. And it was accomplished by Turkey, by Iran, and by Russia. And in fact, the government that they have today in Syria is from a group of people whom the Americans designated as terrorists. And then they had to rescind that. You know, America can't even get Russia out of the Ukraine. They tried to get Maduro out of Venezuela and they failed. Now they're doing deals with him. They failed in Bolivia. They failed in Georgia. They failed in Kazakhstan. They failed in Hungary, barely holding on in Moldova. They failed in Niger. They failed in Burkina Faso. They failed in Mali. They failed in Ethiopia. They failed in Guinea. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's been a very long time since America could just say to anyone, this is how things are going to be. So I don't know why anyone acts like America is the CEO of planet Earth. I mean, the truth of the matter is that the illusion of American supremacy has always been a function of relative power, not absolute power. The US was never invincible. It was just unchallenged after the Cold War. The Soviet Union was America's only real global competitor at that time. But even then, they weren't equal, really, in terms of economic output, technological innovation, global reach, and so on. But yet they were still enough to keep America from being globally supreme. I mean, the USSR was militarily formidable, but it was an economic and administrative disaster. Their collapse was self-inflicted. It wasn't the consequence of American power. The Soviet collapse was caused by inefficient central planning. It was caused by bad policy, overextension of military spending to try to keep up with the US and their military spending, internal corruption, stagnation, failed economic reforms like perestroika. That system died. It wasn't killed. The US didn't defeat the Soviet Union. They just outlived it. That's not the same thing. The collapse of the USSR left the United States as the default superpower. It was the default superpower, not because America was all powerful, but because nobody else was left. And now that era is over. Even the new US Secretary of State, Rubio, himself has acknowledged that America being the unipolar global superpower was an anomaly of history. And that moment has now passed into history. The US only appeared unstoppable because no competitor existed until now. But now today, America has multiple competitors. China in terms of technology and economy and so on, Russia in terms of military, geopolitics and so forth, and then of course the Global South, the entirety of the Global South, BRICS, alliances against US hegemony. All of this are competitors that America can't cope with. I mean, just look at Russia. In some ways, Russia today has even more influence than they had when they were part of the Soviet Union, when they ran the Soviet Union. I mean, it's a significantly smaller economy than the United States, but the strategic importance of that economy and the strategic importance of their economic relationships is still enough to frustrate America's dominance. So you see what I'm saying? I mean, when you really look at it objectively, America's narrative about themselves does not hold up to scrutiny. I mean, even if you look at objectively, World War II that they always brag about, it was the Soviets who ultimately defeated the Nazis, not America. 80% of Nazi casualties were inflicted by the Soviet Union, by Soviet troops. John Wayne didn't defeat Hitler. That's all Hollywood propaganda. The truth is that a great deal of the strength and a great deal of the power that everyone thinks that America has, it never really did have. That's a fact. And now, that relative power, that relative strength is diminishing because it always relied on the absence of any other power existing. Well, now other powers exist. So you have to understand both that, first of all, America never was as powerful as you have been made to believe it was. And secondly, you have to understand that the power that they did have is in steep decline. And it's been shrinking for years now. That's the reality. And as I've talked about, the power structure in America knows this. They're fully aware. That's why we see them withdrawing. That's why they're self-isolating. It's not by choice, it's by necessity. They have to. Because not only does America not enjoy global supremacy, they're not even competitive anymore. They don't have the coercive power that they had when there was no one else on the block. Really, there are only two main reasons why we ever thought that America was so powerful. First, like I said, is because after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there simply wasn't anyone else. So in the absence of another power, they looked very powerful. And the second reason is because their use of their power was always so malicious and so brutal. So their viciousness amplified their power in our minds. But there's a difference between being powerful and being dangerous. America was just dangerous, but they weren't that powerful. America was always bloody, but they were never brave. And so now, with the rise of China, with the rise of BRICS and so on, with the rise of increasing regional autonomy, say, America is retreating because it has to. I mean, you should really stop. America should stop posturing about China. It's ridiculous about rivalry and conflict with China, or what have you. What you will or what you won't do about Taiwan. It's just absurd. You're not going to get into an armed conflict with China, and everyone knows it. You won't even fight Russia yourselves. You'll just let the entirety of Ukraine commit national suicide on your behalf. I mean, China wouldn't even have to fight your military. They could just decide one day that you don't get access to their rare earths anymore, and they'll neutralize you overnight. Let's be serious. Even your uniforms, your military uniforms, are made in China. So the point is, America isn't what it used to be, and even what it used to be wasn't what you thought it was. So when Trump says this or Trump says that, or if it was Biden and he said this or that or the other, whoever else, it doesn't matter. When they talk about what they want to happen in the world, it's not divine decree to which all the nations of the world must capitulate. Those days are over. Because look, Trump didn't say anything, actually. He didn't say anything different than what Biden said. Biden also said that he wanted Egypt and Jordan to take the Palestinians, and he was told no, just like Trump has been told no. Trump doesn't have any more power than Biden had. It's the same office. I mean, Trump can put, expel the Palestinians on his vision board and meditate about trying to manifest it, see if the universe wants to give it to him, but that's about it. This is not a realistic suggestion in any way whatsoever. And in my opinion, Trump knows that. The Palestinians aren't going anywhere. Now, I should say, obviously, what he is suggesting, just the fact that he's suggesting it, whether he's serious or not, what he is suggesting is genocide. He's suggesting ethnic cleansing. He's suggesting a crime against humanity. And frankly, again, regardless of whether he's serious or not, just for saying it, and of course, any single step that he might take in trying to get support for that suggestion, well, he should be tried at the ICJ. But that's not saying something special. There hasn't been an American president in my whole lifetime who shouldn't have been charged and tried for war crimes. And inshallah, bi'idhnillah, we'll see a day like that. We'll see a day when that happens. That day will come, inshallah. I mean, Trump is too old to worry about that. But there are people in his administration who could potentially live long enough to live in a world where American officials are finally held accountable for their crimes. I don't know how old Anthony Blinken is, but he should definitely be in the dock, along with Obama, along with Hillary, Bush, Cheney, all the lot of them. Marco Rubio, that Secretary of State, he's not that old. He might just live long enough to see his day in court. But look, the reality is there's no plan here. Any Zionists who are getting excited about it are basically the same as people who buy a meme coin or an NFT. You're being had. Trump is cutting all foreign spending, U.S. aid, freezing all foreign assistance. Even the CIA is on the chopping block. He's going to pull American troops out of Syria. He's even talking about reducing or even potentially withdrawing American troops, ground troops out of Europe. He's not about to undertake a military occupation of Gaza by the United States. You must be joking. I mean, this is so obvious that it shouldn't even need to be said. And as for the expulsion of the Palestinians into some sort of settlements somewhere, Egypt, Jordan, or somewhere else, well, his plan is for the Arab states to pay for it. Okay, this is according to the prevailing interpretation of his words. I'll talk about that also in a minute. But according to the interpretation that everyone is going with, Trump wants to expel the Palestinians, if not to Egypt, and if not to Jordan, then to any number of other countries unnamed. And then he wants to have the rich Arab states, the Gulf states, and so on, pay for building settlements for them. Well, again, obviously that's not going to happen. That's not going anywhere. The entire Arab League has rejected that suggestion. The GCC has rejected that suggestion. This suggestion that they should finance America's ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. No, that's not going anywhere. I mean, here's the suggestion. In summary, he's saying, you Arab states, you finance the genocide for us, and in return, we'll grab all the land in Gaza, we'll build it up, we'll make resorts, we'll put hotels on the beaches, and we'll get access to the natural gas off the coast. Meanwhile, what you'll get in return is to enjoy decades of destabilization, refugee crises, and the permanent hatred of your own people. Do we have a deal? It's ludicrous, and everyone knows it. I mean, everyone knows it unless you're like Ben Shapiro or something. Honestly, I've said it before, that trope about superior Jewish intelligence has been forever debunked since October 7th. Look, in my opinion, this is all a ploy. He doesn't mean any of this. I've told you before, never take Trump literally. Never take him literally. All of his public statements are either bargaining tactics or sheer misdirection, always. That's all it is. If you're going to react every time that man opens his mouth, you're not going to survive the next 4 years. So you need to calm down, keep a cool head. So enough about that nonsense. Let's talk about reality. Okay, the reality is that Trump, as I've said many times, is a mascot of the a-national owners and controllers of global financialized capital. He's not pro-American, he's not pro-Zionist, he's pro-profit, personal profit. His loyalty is always going to bend towards whoever has the higher net worth. And he's absolutely in the camp of the GCC, and so is Elon Musk. It's the same thing with him. Never take a word he says seriously. You know, Musk would not have even been able to buy Twitter without Gulf money. And Trump, I mean, we just saw him at the UFC match with the head of the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund. He's a Khaliji president. I told you before, he's a Khaliji president. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is the head of that investment firm called Affinity Partners. And that investment firm is nothing but a front for the UAE and for Saudi Arabia, for their money. It's their money. Trump received himself tens of millions of dollars from the Saudis and from the Emiratis in the form of investments and partnerships and agreements and mutual projects and so forth. Netanyahu's net worth is maybe somewhere between 10 and 20 million dollars. Mohammed bin Salman's net worth is roughly 50,000 times more than that, okay? Between Saudi Arabia and the UAE, you're talking about trillions, not billions, not millions, not billions, trillions of dollars. And if you don't want to talk about Netanyahu himself, personally, as an individual, talk about Israel. The entire GDP of Israel is a fraction of the money that's controlled by the GCC. Not to mention that 60% of Israel's GDP is literally debt financed. So in my opinion, the only part of what Trump said that is actually true is that he wants to see Gaza rebuilt. And he wants the Gulf to do it. And he wants affinity partners to be involved. When he says America will own Gaza, what he actually means is, the translation of that is, that he wants himself and his son-in-law to have a share in the development of Gaza as financed by Saudi Arabia and the UAE. You know, he wants a Trump Tower on Salah ad-Din Street. He wants a Trump hotel on the beach. And he wants the region to be stable and to be peaceful, because stability and peace is the only way that the region can be profitable. I mean, if you pay close attention during that joint press conference with Netanyahu, he was actually quite vague in his language, deliberately, in my opinion. He was quite vague. His wording, he left it up to the listener to decide how to interpret what he was saying. So the Zionists will interpret it one way and other people can interpret it another way. At the official press conference, he never said the words transfer the Palestinians or expel the Palestinians to neighboring countries. All he said was that neighboring countries should build places for where the Palestinians could live, where they won't be shot at and destroyed and so on, which is exactly what the GCC is going to do. They're going to build places like that inside of Gaza. In fact, I think it's quite noteworthy that he talked a lot about how horrific the situation is for the people in Gaza. He talked about that a lot. How they're not safe, how they're attacked, how they're being killed and shot at and bombed and so forth, and how terrible it is. All while the killer is standing right next to him, forced to listen to how disgraceful and how inhuman Trump thinks it is. Having to listen to Trump talk about the right of the Palestinian people to live in peace and safety. People who he described as a wonderful people who built a civilization. I mean, you can see the confusion on Netanyahu's face when he's saying these things. It was an indirect condemnation of Netanyahu's actions. You know, Trump was very proud of those Abraham Accords. He was very proud of that. And I think he basically feels that Israel betrayed that accomplishment. And it's known anyway. It's known. And it's very clear that Trump has a personal loathing for Netanyahu, as does pretty much anyone else who ever had to deal with the man. No one can stand him. You know, people always talk about that Miriam Adelson, the Zionist, who gave Trump's campaign something like $200 million, and they think that that means that Trump has been bought and paid for by the Zionists. But I'll tell you what, Saudi Arabia gave Affinity Partners $2 billion. So I think that just making the suggestion that the Palestinians should be expelled, a suggestion that he knows full well is going to get shot down, well, that's what Adelson paid for. That's all she'll get. Services rendered. But what the Saudis paid for with that $2 billion, they'll get. And there's no ambiguity about what the Saudis want. They've had the same position for over 20 years. It's the Out of Peace Initiative of 2002, the establishment of a Palestinian state. And that is something that they have reiterated repeatedly. And they've gone on a diplomatic and an economic campaign across the world, across Europe, to try to galvanize support for that. And they're succeeding. And all of Israel's actions since October the 7th have just accelerated and facilitated the pursuit of that goal. They're making it inevitable. I'll mention something here about the natural gas off the coast of Gaza, because I've heard a lot of people online, I've seen a lot of people online who look like they're newcomers to the Palestinian issue, like they just got on board after October 7th, and they're acting like this gas is a new discovery. No, it's known. And there are exploration and extraction contracts with the Palestinian Authority. The PA is the designated controller of those resources, not Israel and not Hamas. The PA will return to Gaza and they will be the government there. Probably won't be Mahmoud Abbas, won't be Abu Mazen, but it will be the PA. Hamas is going to be disarmed, they'll be disbanded, and there will be reconstruction. I still think that China will be recruited, or anyway they should be recruited, to manage the rebuilding, but of course Egypt is going to be involved heavily. They'll be heavily involved in that. They'll probably do most of the heavy lifting, as well as the Gazans themselves. But of course, the bulk of the funding is going to come from the Gulf. As you know, there'll be smaller investors, Turkey and so on, probably China. See, the Saudis want to have a Palestinian state. They want to have a deal for a Palestinian state, if not the actual establishment of it, before they develop Gaza, before they rebuild it, before the reconstruction starts, before they sink billions and billions of dollars into reconstruction just to have Israel bomb it again. So they either want the establishment of a state or they want a deal for an establishment of a state. So I think that Trump is just trying to pressure them to start the reconstruction now, before there's a deal. That's why he's pretending that America is going to take over Gaza and kick out the Palestinians. You know, it's just a pressure tactic. It's just a bluff. You know, saying like to the Gulf, if you don't move on it now, we're going to do it and you're going to lose out. But again, everyone knows that this is a completely empty threat. Trump is not about to spend a dime rebuilding Gaza, and he's not about to send American troops over there. There's no question about that. I mean, even now you've got that Eric Prince and his mercenaries over there in Gaza now. And that's being portrayed by many as an American private military company. But Eric Prince works for Abu Dhabi. So in my opinion, Netanyahu has a surprise coming. You know, when he had that speech before Congress, it became very clear that he has no comprehension of the fact that we're not living in the 1990s. That America is not now what it was. And that Israel isn't what it was to America at that time. And he doesn't seem to recognize how much the world has changed and how much the region has changed drastically. So he might actually believe that what Trump said is feasible. But anyone who is not a delusional psychomaniac knows that it's nonsense. It's increasingly looking like there's going to be elections in Israel relatively soon, and Netanyahu is going to lose. Looks like probably Naftali Bennett's party will win. And Bennett has very good ties with the GCC, with the UAE especially. The Emiratis have been in touch with all sorts of opposition politicians in Israel. Even Bennett himself, he just came to Abu Dhabi at the end of January. So whatever daydream that Netanyahu is having right now, I think it's a bit like Joe Pesci at the end of Goodfellas. He thinks that he's about to get everything that he ever wanted for himself, but actually he's about to get what we've always wanted for him. But I should say that there is a genuine concern. I have a genuine concern with regards to reconstruction about what the people are going to do in Gaza, where they're going to live during the rebuilding process. That's a genuine issue, in my opinion. The Gaza Strip has been completely demolished. So that's my only real concern about all of this, that maybe Jordan, for example, they might cave to America's requests, thinking that it's for humanitarian reasons. And then they'll, of course, stipulate that the Palestinians must be guaranteed the right to return to Gaza after reconstruction is complete. So I don't think it's impossible that Jordan might succumb to the pressure, but I don't think it's likely. It's not impossible, but it's also not likely. There's other solutions, obviously. But to be honest, even in that worst case scenario, in the worst case scenario of the Gazans being relocated, the power dynamics in the region are such now, currently, that I don't think either the U.S. Nor Israel will have the ability to prevent the Gazans from returning to Gaza. So, what else? Well, I should say, look, don't react to every headline you see, and certainly don't react to everything that Trump says or everything Netanyahu says. It's embarrassing. Calm down. Frankly, it's amazing to me that anyone treats anything that these people say as decisive or as definitive. I mean, we've spent the last 15 months continuously debunking their lies, their constant lies, their continuous lies. But for some reason, people still treat what they say as serious. You take it seriously. And because of that, there's been so much disinformation spread by people who do this. You get hysterical when you see some headline and you don't bother to verify it. You don't bother to see where it's coming from, to notice that it's coming straight from Zionist sources, straight from the Israeli press, and then you repost it, you retweet it, you share it. You react to things that are completely fabricated and that are nothing but propaganda. And you're only helping the enemy when you do that. Like I said, a moment of reflection is all it takes. A moment of reflection will tell you that Trump's plan isn't any sort of plan at all. It's absolute rubbish. It's a bluff. Not to mention the fact that we already have experience with this man and all of the outlandish things that he has declared he would do, and they never materialized. They never got done. I mean, from his previous administration, Mexico never did pay for that wall that still isn't built. So now he's talking about Greenland. He's talking about Canada. He's talking about Panama. What he's going to do, they're going to take over Gaza. There's going to be an iron dome over America, a big, beautiful dome. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. The government that you said was sending condoms to Gaza, spending millions of dollars on condoms in Gaza, and Hamas was making condom bombs. They say these things. They're treating you like idiots. So at least try to prove them wrong. I mean, if you've actually been following what's going on in Gaza, if you've actually been following the region for the last, even if it's just for the last 15 months, you never did it before, but for 15 months, by now, you should have a better understanding of the power dynamics in the region. You should have a better understanding of the power dynamics in the region. And you should at least have noticed the extent to which American influence has declined. Because like I said, Biden wanted to do the same thing that Trump wants to do now, or that he suggested now. So do you really think that after over a year of genocide, over a year of global outrage, global awareness, 15 months of regional diplomatic cohesion, Iran, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, all aligning with BRICS during that time. Do you really think that it's more feasible now to expel the Palestinians than it was in November 2023? Think it through. Just think it through before you react. Trump shared on his social media account, Truth Social, a video of Jeffrey Sachs talking about how Netanyahu got America into senseless wars and how he was a menace to the region. And you should have seen the comments from Trump's constituency, Trump's core supporters, Those are the only people who follow him and comment on his posts. Well, they all hate Netanyahu. They hate Israel. They hate AIPAC. Now, there's no way that this is going to go the way that Netanyahu hopes that it's going to go. But he should be the only one. Netanyahu should be the only one who's foolish enough and who's insane enough to think that it will.